Okay, so recently in one of the comments, someone had asked if I could put together a preset that was kind of trying to get some of the tones of Carlos Santana. And this is just kind of a quick, simple approach to that based on kind of my understanding. So if you look at any of the rig rundowns, these days, he's got quite a setup going on. He's got multiple amps running. He's got, a Mesa. He's got a Dumble. He's got some other kind of boutique amps going on, multiple cabinets. And I wanted to keep it kind of simpler than that. I wanted to focus just in on kind of the old school Santana kind of Mesa tone. And that's what I've tried to do here. And for this demo, I'm using a guitar. It's more of a stressed out guitar with a humbucker in the neck position. Unfortunately, I don't have a Santana style guitar or even a Les Paul style guitar right now on hand. So this is the closest thing I could get to kind of his kind of tone. But this has a very kind of vintage spec kind of PAF kind of pickup in the neck and maybe a little hotter PAF in the bridge. So I think it's a good approximation, at least as close as I can get. So when we look at Santana's tone, and I look through the rig rundown and kind of the history of his tone, obviously the amp that's been associated with him is kind of the snakeskin Mesa. And so in the Quad Cortex, when you look at the amp models, you've got the Duo, which is kind of the higher gain stuff. You've got the Petrucci amp. There's really not, in my mind, a good model that covers, the Mark I amp or even the Mark, 3 or 4 that he uses today. So what I ended up doing was I'm sticking with a Lone Star drive, and I've got the settings here. I've got the drive at about half, the gains push up to 7. I've got the EQ on the thicker, and then we're EQing it kind of the way he does. So pulling back the bass a little bit, pushing the mids a lot, pushing a little bit of treble, pushing the presence a good amount. And the one thing I'll say is, the tone I was shooting for was, I think, closer to some of the older Santana. I know a lot of people, when they think Santana, they think of smooth. That's a little bit of a darker tone than he historically had used. It's a great tone, but for this one, I kind of went more in between that and kind of the older, Black Magic Woman, Europa kind of tones. And then what I did is I put a parametric EQ after the amp, and I set the frequencies to be the standard frequencies that are on a Mesa amp. So if you've ever seen a Mesa amp and it has kind of the 4 levers for setting EQ, these are the frequencies that are set to 80, 240, 750, 2200, 6600. And I set these to be a little bit scooped, not too much, but just a little bit, kind of pushing the top end, pushing a little bit of bottom end. And then in terms of cabinets, when I looked at his rig rundown, he was using cabinets that had a mix of speakers in it. So he had V30s, and then he had, I think, some G12s in there. So what I've done is I've mixed a Mesa cab with V30s, and this is the 03, which is my favorite kind of 4x12 on the Quad Cortex. And I'm mixing in kind of a Marshall with the greenbacks. So again, just trying to get a good mix of speakers, trying to kind of fill in that tone. And then, of course, on the front, we've got a tube screamer, again, for that very mid-forward tone. And you can see I got the tone up at 6, the overdrive's at 6, the levels pull back a little bit. So we're not using this to push the amp, we're just adding overdrive here. And in the back end, I've just got a plate reverb just to add in some amount of reverb. A lot of his tones don't have a lot of effects on them. So I just wanted to add in, some amount of reverb on the end that you would have in a normal studio recording. So to me, when we talk about the Santana tone, the important thing is that the tone can be usable all across the spectrum of levels you would set on a guitar's volume knob, because he uses the volume knob quite a bit. When you hear about how he plays, he very rarely has the guitar at 10. So this preset is built to also be playable, and really the tones are targeted towards maybe the guitar's halfway up. So, if I push this all the way to 10 and I'm on the neck pickup, it would sound like this. So a very thick singing tone. So it's a really good tone, but I think the magic on this comes in when you roll down that volume. So again, if I'm at 10, if I bring it down to like 6, So you can even go down to about a 4. And the key is also to, adjust your pick attack. And, he's a really dynamic player. So he's playing with a guitar volume, he's using different pick attacks. And that's where you can really get a lot of different kind of tones out of this kind of preset. And even on a kind of in-between position, the key is to try to get a warm tone, but you still want the presence in some of the pick attack. And that's why, for him, it's important to push the mids, don't push the trebles, push the presence instead, to kind of get a little bit of bite, but without sacrificing kind of that mid-hump warmth that he has. So that's the way that I would approach kind of a Santana kind of tone. I think this works pretty well. I especially like how you can really use different guitar volume levels with this tone, with this preset. I think it gives you a lot of options in terms of being more dynamic with the guitar. So I think with Santana, a lot of it's in how he plays the instrument and not as much in the amp itself. As long as the amp has kind of the warmth, but has some clarity to it, has enough gain to kind of sustain, he's going to do the rest of it with his hands and with a guitar. And I think when you approach this kind of preset, you need to do the same thing. Anyway, I hope you like the preset. Like all my other presets, this will be out there on the Cortex Cloud. Feel free to grab it and play around. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And thanks for watching.